Hello, everyone, and welcome. All right, we've got people joining here. I see some attendees rolling on in. I see some familiar names, so welcome back, and some new names. Glad to have you here if you are joining for the first time. So we're going to give it just a moment here. I want to make sure that all of our attendees have an opportunity to join, and then we'll go ahead and dive into today's session. All right, while we're waiting for everyone to have a second to join here, connect to audio, I would love if everyone could pop into our chat and just give a quick hello. Let us know your name and then where you're joining from. All right, we have Jennifer from Virginia, James from New Jersey, Brenda from Arlington. Welcome, everybody. Keep those coming on in here. Oh, another from New Jersey. Great. Welcome, Tyra. Oh, we've got a few people from New Jersey today. I'm wondering if you all are from the same team or if that's just a hot spot for attendees today. All right, now they're rolling in a little bit faster. We have California, Virginia, Philadelphia, Atlanta. All right, well, welcome everybody. We are super glad to have you here. I see that our attendee list is slowing down just a little bit as people are joining, so I think we are safe to go ahead and get started. So if you are just now joining us, welcome. I've met some of you before here in our virtual sphere. My name is Kim, and I'm from the training team here at Prezi. Before we dive into the content today and I introduce our amazing guest speaker, I want to do just a little bit of housekeeping to set the stage for us today. So we will be taking questions throughout our content today and gathering them for a Q&A at the end. So what I'm going to ask you to do today is to use your Q&A for those burning questions that you want our guest speaker to answer, and then use the chat for any thoughts, reactions, comments that you might have. So if you've been part of our monthly webinar before, you know that we love to encourage your participation, and it's not just a one-way convo from us. So any thoughts that you have as we're going through are totally welcome, and then we'll save those Q&A for the end. So that said, let me go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for today. I'm very excited to introduce Lorraine Lee. She's a colleague of mine here at Prezi, and she's the head of editorial. Not only that, she is a LinkedIn learning course instructor, and I invited Lorraine here today because, as you know from our monthly webinar series, we are always trying to add value to your virtual and hybrid experience. And of course, we're here talking about Prezi Video most of the time, and we love Prezi Video, but we also want to make sure that you not only know how to use Prezi Video, but know how to use it well and use it for a great experience for you and for your team. So Lorraine is here today because she has some amazing tips to help you stand out on video and really maximize the impact that you can have. And I've been fortunate enough to watch several of Lorraine's videos and sit in multiple sessions with her. And what I love about what she's going to share with you today is that I think you'll be able to take a lot of instant practical tips away from it that are going to prove very valuable in your very next meeting that you're going to do. So with that, Lorraine, I'd like to welcome you here to our monthly webinar. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and give the stage to you.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you for that intro, and welcome everyone. It is so great to see you all from all over the world. What is the first thing you all do when you get on a video call? Most of us look at ourselves. We want to make sure that our hair is okay and there's nothing weird going on in the background. Essentially, we want to make a really great impression on video. And now that many of us are remote, often the only way our colleagues or clients see us is on video. So that makes video really, really important. And many people still don't know how to use it to their advantage so that they can stand out and create engaging interactions. For the next 30 minutes or so, you're going to learn the essentials for how to present yourself in the best light, both figuratively and literally, to get noticed by your colleagues, clients, and peers by making that really strong first impression on camera. Now, before we dive in, I want to share a little bit more about who I am and why I am here talking about video. So as Kim mentioned, my name is Lorraine, and I'm the editorial director at Prezi. I frequently talk about video and virtual presentations, and I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor of the popular course Virtual and Hybrid Meeting Essentials. I was also an editor at LinkedIn for 6 years, where I worked on its video products and had my own video series. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I look forward to chatting even after the webinar ends today. Now, speaking of interacting with one another, we are going to be using a Slido today. So to access this, you can go to slido.com on your phone or on your browser. So slido.com, the password is going to be T here, or you can feel free to scan this QR code here to access it. For those who aren't familiar with Slido, it's a really great virtual collaboration tool. It's going to allow us to do fun polls and word clouds and other things together and just get a gauge on audience sentiment. So please join here to engage during the session. And as Kim mentioned, for any questions, please send them into the Q&A section, and then any comments, reactions, etc., go into the chat. So hopefully you're all going to be able to log in. Kim, maybe you can send this if you haven't already. And let's dive in now. So I think we can all agree that with all the distractions and things that we have to do in a day, being able to stand out and capture attention is becoming even harder. And that is why the T method is critical to you making that memorable first impression on video. Now, what is the first thing you do each morning? For many of us, it's going to be grabbing a cup of coffee, or in this case, let's just call it tea. The T method is going to cover the first things you should address before jumping onto a video call. And the T method here is going to ensure that you appear both confident and competent, and it's going to elevate your energy and appearance to those who are on the other side of the camera. But what is this T method exactly? T stands for tech, energy, and aesthetics. So let's start with T. Now, tech is probably one of the more overwhelming aspects of our virtual world. We have a lot of new things to think about compared to before in our offices, where all we had to do was show up in the conference room, dial in, and call in from that central panel. So I want to make the tech part less overwhelming for you, because we can, get really elaborate with it. There's a lot of equipment out there, but I want to share what I view as, again, the basics you need to have an awesome video call. And these are personally things I've used very well. I, speak at different companies. Everyone, no one has ever complained that things look good. And these items don't break the bank, which I think is another important consideration. So we'll first cover the hardware you need, which includes a microphone. You'll also need an external camera. And then I recommend you get a clicker. And then we'll talk a little bit about software. Now, before we dive in, I'd love to go to the Slido. So I'm curious, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being amazing, how would you rate your tech setup? How comfortable do you feel with what you are equipped with right now? All right, so mix of 3 and 4 right now. Most people seem to be at a 4. That's a good place to be. One person's a 5. That's awesome. Wonderful. So it seems like the majority is a 4, which is very solid. So as I'm talking, if any of you have your own tips for what has worked well for you, definitely drop those into the chat. So let's go into talking about our mics first. If you change one thing today, please make sure that your audio is good. If the sound is good, you'll be able to stay engaged no matter what is on the screen. And the same can't be said the other way around. Also, many people will forgive bad cameras, but they won't forgive bad audio. And I'm sure we've all been on those calls where it's super hard to hear what the person is saying. Every third word is getting chopped off, or maybe it's just really muffled. And if you can't hear what they're saying, you just feel like you want to hang up right then and there. And this is why I recommend buying an external microphone. Now, one benefit, of course, is that you're going to have better sound quality, because the mics within our laptops are not the best. When you get a microphone, your sound is automatically going to be crisper. And not only that, but a lot of microphones come with extra adjustments. So you can adjust the volume, maybe the bass. So there's a lot of customization that you can do to make sure that you're getting the best sound based on your voice. There's another also really practical use for it, which I love. So needing to click unmute and mute, or even, hold down the space bar on Zoom calls to speak, takes some coordination. And the moment you decide you want to say something, there's going to be that natural lag as you reach for your mouse to click unmute, or you're trying to find the space bar. An external microphone is amazing because There is a literal physical button where you can mute and unmute super easily. It allows a conversation to be more natural. It gets rid of that lag. And especially for my fellow introverts out there, this is really a game changer when it comes to speaking up, because you're able to respond right away and not have to, have that extra lag, that extra delay, that extra effort to say something. Now, here's a few recommendations for you. So I use this microphone called Fifine. I just got it from Amazon. It works very well for me. Shure is a popular brand. Neat is as well. And then you might also want to check out AKG. Next, let's dive into our webcams. Now, external cameras are by far one of the best investments you can also make. And similar to our audio, our laptop webcams are not very good. We often look grainy and dark in them. Now, when I got my Logitech Brio, which is considered, I think, one of the best webcams out there for the price, I instantly felt more confident. I knew I was looking so much better on camera. It was picking up the lighting a lot better. I just looked sharper, crisper. It was such an improvement. And with this camera, you can also have more customization similar to the microphone. You can zoom in on your face. You can adjust some of the lighting and the colors as well. So this is what I use. There are a few others you can check out as well. So Nexigo, Elgato Facecam, and even your phone, which I will elaborate a little bit more on this shortly. Now let's move on to our next piece of tech, which is our clickers. Now, clicker is certainly not a must, but I like to add it here because I do think it can add a lot of value to your video calls, especially when you are giving presentations. Now, ideally, when you're presenting, your hands are going to be moving to help emphasize your points, and you want to convey enthusiasm and energy. And when you're doing that, you can lose track of where the buttons are on the keyboard. And if you do that, you're going to have to be looking down each time, figuring out where it is, click it, and it just doesn't look as smooth or professional. When you have the clicker in your hand, instead of needing to look down to figure out what key to push, you're just going to be more professional looking, and it's just going to be easier for you as well. There's also that subconscious effect of looking more authoritative, kind of like a teacher with the pointer at the front of the classroom. Now, again, this isn't necessarily a must, but I would definitely look into this one or something like this if you are giving presentations often. So this is the Logitech clicker, and it works very well for me. Next, let's talk about our software. There are a few key pieces of software I'd recommend to enhance your tech setup. So Crisp is amazing for blocking out background noise, and it also works with external mics. I know both Kim and myself use Crisp, and in my old apartment, there was construction that was happening right outside. It was so loud and so distracting to me, and I'd asked people on the call if they could hear that, and they couldn't, and that was because of Crisp, so it really works. We have software like Camo, which allows you to use your phone as a camera. So our phones have really, really nice cameras. And so what you would do is you get a phone stand, download the software Camo, and then you can use it as your camera, which is very cool. We have Ecamm, which gives you additional controls over how your video appears. A lot of people use this for live streaming, if any of you are using that. But again, more functionality, more customization in terms of how you want your video to appear. And then, of course, Prezi Video to create more engaging meetings through the content that you are putting on your screen. Now, another key thing when it comes to tech is our Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi is often the culprit of bad audio or video quality. So ideally, you should be hardwired with an Ethernet cord if your home has one, but it's not always possible, and that's okay. So for those with unstable internet, and it's always unstable, like at the most important moments, right? I would encourage you all to check Speedify, which combines all of your available networks into one super network. So it would include your Ethernet, your phone network, your Wi-Fi, just anything else you have around the house. And I first heard about this tool from Ecamm's Doc Rock, and Doc Rock is such an expert when it comes to portable studios and, making sure that you don't lose your connection. So definitely would encourage you to check that out. So I'm going to move back over to the Slido. Would love to hear from all of you. What are your favorite hardware and software to use? And maybe we can get some inspiration from this group if you're trying something new. So this one's actually going to be a word cloud. So we'll see if particular hardware and software is more popular. And it doesn't have to be something I listed. It might be a keyboard or a mouse you really like using. All right, I see some people typing. I love asking the audience for their expert suggestions. Nice. One person's using Chris, one person's using Prezi. Hopefully you're all using Prezi. All right, anyone else want to add? 2 for Prezi. Love to see it. Okay, Prezi video, amazing. Let's see. Logitech camera, very nice. Yeah, I'm gonna leave this open. Everyone just keep typing away. You will all be able to see the suggestions afterwards. Speedify is new to me. Okay, amazing. I hope it works for you. All right, so I'll leave that open for now. So we've covered the tech part of the T method. So let's move into the next section. And that's gonna be our energy. So your energy consists of many different things, not just whether you feel awake and alert for the call. So in this section, we're going to talk about the importance of your introduction, finding a moment to reset, eye contact, and smiling. So we're going to start off with your intro. Now, believe it or not, people make a first impression of you in as little time as a few milliseconds and in as most as a few seconds. And that is not a lot of time at all. So this first impression is going to be really heavily influenced by the energy that you're bringing into the call. So I'm going to share a few tricks with you that's going to help. The first thing is to remember that your mood really does matter. Even though we're on video, people can sense if we're feeling agitated or tired or uncomfortable. And in fact, these feelings are probably even more magnified on video because any positive emotions or facial gestures don't come through as well as they do in person with this barrier of the screen. So that means that we need to put in a little bit of extra work. Now, one way to counteract being seen as having negative or even neutral emotions is to think of a good or funny memory before you join the call. Now, I'm going to actually pause. I would love all of us to just take a few seconds to think of something that made us laugh or smile in the past week. And hopefully we can all think of something. So I'm going to just pause for a few seconds here. Okay, hopefully you were able to think of something. If not, I have some little help here. When you thought of that memory or you looked at these cute little animals, I hope you smiled a bit more and you felt a little bit lighter. And it's that kind of energy that we want in your calls and on your face to create that strong first impression on video. Next, you'll want to also think about what you're saying when you're introducing yourself on calls. So we're going to go back to the Slido now. And I want to hear from all of you. What do you usually say first when you jump on a video call? How are you? Maybe you're asking about the weather. Can you see or hear me okay? Or is it something else? Okay, we got a mix of, half-half. How are you? Something else. For those who said something else, hold on to that. I'm going to ask you later about that. Okay, interesting. So majority something else, and then a mix between how are you and what's the weather like over there. So seems like most of you are in the right direction. So starting off a call with questions like, how are you? Or can you hear me? Can you see my screen? Are not going to actually be the ideal way to start off a call, even though I know on my calls, at least a majority of people are asking these questions. And because of that, they're a little bit more generic. They can make you seem, unprepared if you're not sure if the audio and the tech is working. And again, they don't help you stand out because we hear these questions all the time. So how about changing questions to ones like, it's so great to see you. It's been a while. I'd love to hear what you're most excited to be working on right now versus how's work been going? Is it busy? And everyone always says, yes, things are so busy. What was the highlight of your weekend instead of how was your weekend? Because if you ask how was your weekend, the answer is usually it was good. Or are you watching any interesting shows? What do you recommend? Now, questions like these break up the monotony we usually experience when joining the call, and they're going to wake the brain up out of autopilot. And if you can be that person to help turn small talk into more interesting conversations, you're going to naturally connect better with each other, you're going to learn more about each other, and you're going to become more memorable. Now, let's actually move back to the chat in Zoom. And a lot of you mentioned that you ask something else when you start off calls. So I'd love to hear from all of you What do you currently use? If some of you were asking, how are you? What do you want to try using for the next call? So let's move over to the chat here. Oh, and I see some people commented their favorite tools before in the chat. That's awesome. Okay, so what are you using to start off your calls? What are you saying to bring that energy and bring that connection? Anyone want to share? Maybe you're using some of the ones on here. I really like asking a question and then also sharing something about myself in response. So if I'm asking what was the highlight of your weekend, or maybe I'll start off talking about my weekend and then ask someone else to kind of open up the discussion, show that I want to actually hear from them versus just hearing good. Okay, Kim says that her manager, who I know who's awesome, has an icebreaker question every week, different, quirky, and fun instead of work related. I do something similar, so that's great to hear. Robin normally starts off playing music for a few minutes and then she asks how they found it. My team also has a team Spotify playlist, so I love that idea of playing music. It can really change the mood of a meeting. Jennifer asks people to share their weekly wins. Amazing. Now, these are all really great ways to just change up the conversation from what everyone's used to. So thank you for sharing. So lastly, make sure the language that you're using to start off the call is inclusive. So you're going to want to find opportunities to use people's first names and then try to use language like we, our, and us. And humans, we love hearing our names. It makes us feel a sense of belonging. It helps us feel connected with the person saying it. And of course, it also recaptures attention if someone is zoning out and it brings their focus back into the call. Now, there's also a benefit to using collaborative language. If you feel like you are part of something and you are part of a larger group, you're likely going to be more motivated to contribute and bring your best self into the discussion. So if you're leading a call, these are words that you're going to want to use. There's also research behind this. According to research published in the Harvard Business Review, people who used I statements were actually more junior, whereas the confident leaders, they didn't feel the need to call attention to themselves. And in fact, they tried especially to call attention to the collective group or team. So when it comes to language, the key takeaway here is that by being thoughtful about the words we use and the questions we ask, we really have that opportunity to stand out and make that lasting impression. Next, you want to make sure you're leaving time for yourself to reset in between calls. And this has made a really big difference for me. So I'm excited to share with you all as well. So we're going back into the Slido. Let's see this next one. So I'm curious to hear from all of you. What time do you typically end your meetings? Are you ending right on time at the half hour or hour? Are you ending typically a few minutes early before that? Or do you typically run overtime a few minutes late? Okay, 100% so far. Oh, okay, a mix. Majority right on the dot at the half hour or hour. Few of you ending a few minutes early. I was always like a horse race with these things. The majority right now ending a few minutes early. Okay, so the mix seems to be between right on the dot at the half hour or always end a few minutes early. The least popular, I always run a few minutes overtime. Okay, wonderful, thank you. So virtual, it opened up a lot of opportunity, but it also made it way too easy to schedule meetings. So we are hopping from meeting to meeting to meeting with no breaks and back to back without giving us a chance to breathe and context switch. And as a result, I don't know about all of you, but for me, when that happens, I'm going into meetings more frenzied and agitated, and I'm trying to respond to my emails and Slacks, right before the next call starts, and it's just craziness. So the solution, what I like to tell people, is to end meetings 5 minutes ahead of the half hour or hour to give your team this time to refresh and reset. Now, one simple update you can make right after this webinar is if you have a calendar scheduling link, update it so it's going to be a 25-minute meeting instead of a 30-minute meeting. I'm also doing this now for internal meetings when I schedule calls. And please, when you do schedule that, make sure you are ending at this set time. I find it helpful to call it out with a phrase like, I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else anyone wants to cover before we end at 8:55? So this is really key to going into your video calls with the right energy to reset again, and everyone's happier. Trust me, when you start doing this, everyone's going to be much happier. Next, let's think about eye contact. Now, you should always aim to be looking at the camera or right below it. In person, we make eye contact to boost something called oxytocin, which is that social feel-good hormone. It makes us feel bonded and connected. So those who really stand out are going to be the ones who can recreate that on video too. But I understand eye contact is hard to do at first because it's human nature to want to look at ourselves, to make sure we look okay, or we like to look at ourselves to see how we look reacting to something. But as best as you can, I really encourage you to fight the urge. And if you turn off self-view, it might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but it makes a huge difference. It will make you focus more, concentrate more, and then not worry about how you look. Now, I also see a lot of presentations and even video calls where people are looking kind of maybe sideways at their slide here, or sometimes they have this separate monitor here because their camera's over here. And imagine if I was just talking to you this whole time, just looking over here. It's really hard for you to stay focused because I don't look engaged. And if I don't look engaged, why should you be engaged? So again, as best as you can, look at the camera or right below the camera, depending on your setup, so that the person on the other side feels like you are looking at them. Now, the next and last tip in the energy section is to smile. When you get ready to make a presentation or get on video to meet someone new, you may experience any one of these super fun emotions as your nerves and anxieties build up. Now, when I started doing keynotes and webinars, I was personally these first two here. Now, if I had let those expressions be the main ones in my presentations and I was just talking like this the whole time, the audience probably would not have enjoyed it very much. Instead, when we smile, the person or people on the other side of the camera sees that we are enjoying ourselves and we're excited about what we're talking about, and it encourages them to feel the same. Our voices also sound more positive and they become lighter. You can test this out later when you start smiling and talking. Now, you've probably heard that a smile is contagious, and it does apply to video presenting and video communications as well. A smile is also going to lift your mood and the mood of those around you. Now, I will admit, when I started doing more presentations, remembering to smile took me a little bit of practice just because I was so nervous. But once I got more comfortable, it did make a really big difference in how my audience connected and engaged with me. And I've even had multiple people call out in the chat that they like how much I'm smiling. Next, let's move on to the A of the T method, which is aesthetics. Now, aesthetics are not just about how you look, but also how the world looks around you and how all those things combine to make a first impression. So in this section, we will cover lighting, your environment, your framing, and your clothing. So let's start off with lighting. Believe it or not, confidence can actually be greatly impacted by lighting. And lighting, the good news, super easy to fix, but it's often an afterthought for whatever reason. So I want to show you this in action here. Now imagine I didn't have good lighting and instead I look like this the whole time. It's pretty distracting. It's, I'm not really clear to you, and it doesn't leave you with the best impression. I don't look like I know what I'm doing. And I know when I see myself with bad lighting, I don't really feel good about how I'm appearing. But good lighting is going to make you look more put together, brighter, and more professional. I recommend maybe starting off with ring lights. You're going to want ring lights at least 12 inches to 16 inches in diameter so that they're big enough you get enough light. Or maybe you try a softbox, which is this thing that you see in photo studios. Now, I actually have a softbox in front of me with different color settings, as well as 2 ring lights on the side. So I have a lot of light around me right now. For those who are lucky enough to have windows in their workspace, natural light is going to be the best option, and even better, it's free. So if you have a window in your workspace, make sure the window is in front of you so that the light is going to be shining in directly on your face. And regardless of what light source you choose, always remember it needs to come from the front, never the back. If it comes from the back, you're going to look like you're in a true crime documentary, and we don't want that to be our impression on video calls. Next up, let's talk about curating your environment. Having a well thought out, curated environment is going to give a more professional look and feel to your presentation and to your video calls. And again, similar to lighting, if you look more professional, you're going to feel more confident, look more competent, all the good stuff. Now, this here is something we probably want to avoid. And before I moved into this apartment, actually 2 apartments ago now, I was in a studio, and literally the only place I could put my desk was right in front of my bed. And I always felt really self-conscious on calls, wondering when I was talking, were people looking at the strange background? Were they getting distracted by, my small space? And spacing issues like these, they can't always be helped, but there are creative solutions to this. So maybe you buy a simple room divider. I had a coworker who actually hung up a curtain behind him. He worked in the kitchen. I thought that was really creative. So there are ways, if you have kind of a messy space, to give the illusion, at least, of a proper workspace and make you, again, feel more confident, less self-conscious about how you are appearing on camera. And again, this video, it's a small space. You don't have to have the perfect house. It's just a few feet that you need to set up. Now, my recommendation is that simpler is better. So when you're starting off, maybe you just go for a clean background like Jessica is using here. And this way, no one's getting distracted by what's going on behind her. The content is very easily viewable. But maybe you start getting a little more comfortable with it and you want to get more creative. So if there are any NPR fans in the audience, you might recognize Guy Raz here. He's doing his video outside, which is really creative. He's getting all that natural light that I mentioned is the ideal type of light, and his video looks great. Or maybe you go with this example by Ted. She's a body language expert. Now, she only had 2 plants behind her, but she had so much natural light. The color of the plants really popped. So I thought it was such a beautiful setup, and it also made her look really personable and approachable as well, which I think is kind of the ideal balance we want on video calls. And you can see she has some purple there. I took some inspiration with my background here. Now, I actually used to call this section curating your background, but I think with all of the advances we're seeing in tech and how people are up-leveling their video calls, curating your environment is actually a more accurate description of what someone needs to really stand out and impress. At Prezi, we are seeing a lot of companies and customers like yourself creating a true virtual experience on their video that contributes to their overall presence and professionalism. So here's an example. You can have both a great background and your video environment becomes that much more impressive once you add on-screen visuals like your name tag with your name, your title, your company logo. This here is the example of truly curating the whole virtual and physical environment together on camera to create the strongest impression on video possible. Now, again, this is a small amount of space, but it's extremely valuable real estate, and I really want us to all make sure that we're making the most of it. I would like to move back to the Slido. What is one thing, after talking through all of this, that you want to change in your environment? It can be a physical thing, maybe you want to add a plant, maybe you want to put up a name tag, but what's one thing that you're going to try to change in your environment moving forward? Or if you're perfectly happy with it too, let us know what you love about it. So as we're waiting for responses to come in, I'll let you all know I have some plants here. Dried plants are a really good idea, especially if you don't have a green thumb like myself. So it's real, but dried. Okay, some of you are saying name tag, add some interesting features to a plain background. One of you wants to use ring lights and add plants, add some plants in the background and simplify it a bit. Lighting improvements, wonderful. All right, one of you is good with your setup, wants to keep it simple, that's great too. Perfect, well, yeah, keep typing away. And again, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any more questions about what you might want to include in your background or in your environment. Now we're gonna next talk about framing. So this is what I often see when people are on video. With this angle, I get to see up your nose, under your chin, and while it's great to see your face and kudos for you for keeping your camera on, this is a bit too close and it's actually a little bit uncomfortable to the other side. You probably all are feeling a little weirded out that, if I was just showing my face like this the whole time. And there's a scientific reason for this. People skills expert Vanessa Van Edwards says that this is because this feeling of being too close on camera replicates what we feel in person when someone gets too close in our personal space. Our brain's reaction is to think that this person could harm us. It activates our amygdala, which processes fear. And again, fear is not a feeling we want to be giving others on a video call. Now, being this close is also an issue because it makes it harder for the other side to stay engaged when they're talking to just a floating head. You can't see my hands. It just doesn't feel as much like an in-person conversation. And I'm just so up front and center. You don't have a break. You can't look, it's not in person. You can wave to your coworker walking by. Maybe you're looking down at your notes. When I'm just like this and we're on video, it's very different. You don't have those breaks. So your video should ideally show your shoulders, show a little bit of your torso, and then you want a little bit of space above the top of your head. I like to say 3 fingers worth. So when you do this, you can see I'm no longer just a floating head. It feels a little bit more like we are having an in-person conversation when you can see my hands move, when you can see my body move. So it's just a lot more engaging. So we're going to do another quick group activity together right now. I want us to all check whether we have the right distance from the camera. So if everyone, you wouldn't mind sticking out your arm, and don't worry, I can't see any of you, but stick out your arm and you'll want about an arm's length of distance between yourself and the camera. If you have less than an arm's length of distance, you're likely too close, so push the camera back. And also make sure that you're showing, again, enough of your torso. So you might need to not only push your camera back, but lift it up. Use a laptop stand, use books, use delivery boxes. It does not need to be anything fancy. But again, we do want to make sure we have the right height and then also the right distance. All right, we are now moving into the last part of the T method, which is our clothing. So at a quick glance, all these outfits look more or less okay. Everyone looks professional here, but we'll want to avoid these first two. Why? The white in this first image blends into the background. This person doesn't stand out. For the person with the stripes often move on camera. Same with just patterns generally. If you insist on wearing stripes, wearing a pattern, make sure to always check yourself on camera before jumping on an important call to make sure your clothes aren't, the stripes and the patterns aren't moving on camera. It's a very weird phenomenon. One other thing to keep in mind is to avoid wearing colors that match too closely with your skin tone because it'll otherwise look like you're not wearing anything. Now the 2 people on the bottom here, they have it right. You're going to want to aim for jewel tones to help you pop against your walls and stand out. So jewel tones are colors like emerald, ruby, maybe magenta. And now a lot of people ask me about what to wear on the bottom half on video calls. It really does not matter to me. I think sweatpants are perfectly fine if you feel comfortable. Just make sure you look professional on top, and I think that's perfect. And on that positive note, saying that we can wear sweatpants on video calls still, we have covered the whole T method. So let's do a quick recap to make sure everything really sticks, because I know we just covered a lot of information. For your tech, you'll want to ensure you have the necessary hardware with a microphone, external webcam, and a clicker. You'll also want the right software to enhance the tech that you do have. For energy, you'll want to focus on your intro, resetting yourself between calls, eye contact, and smiling. And for aesthetics, you'll want to improve your lighting, curate your environment, make sure you have the proper camera framing, and also make sure you're wearing the right clothing. If you found this helpful, again, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm posting on these topics all the time, so hopefully you'll be able to get some more tips there. And Kim is going to launch a poll right now. There's 2 questions. The first one asking how you would rate me as a speaker, and I will, any response is welcome. I always appreciate feedback. And then the second question will be around whether you learned something new today.
Yeah, so actually, Lorraine, our poll today should launch after our webinar ends in April.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll get your feedback then.
Okay, wonderful.
But what we would love now, if you could answer that question for us, did you learn something new? And what's your major takeaway? We would love to hear that into our chat right now. And we'll give that just a moment to come in here. And then we'll open it up for some Q&A.
Great.
So I know that I was taking notes, Lorraine. I always have my pen and my notebook handy. So every time I sit in a session with you, I learn something new. And I really loved your tip about ending meetings early.
Uh-huh.
And I've heard you mention this before, but I think it's so valuable to remember. I always equate it to back when we were in person and
Mm,
remote wasn't really the standard for a lot of teams, like rushing to work while you're stuck in a traffic jam.
yeah.
That's the same feeling that back-to-back meetings can give you. So I
Yeah.
love that tip. Always just be mindful of ending a few minutes early. And I wrote that down as something I'm going to try and be a little bit more mindful of employing myself.
Amazing. Yeah, I think the team will be very happy. And it's funny, like I say, end a few minutes early, but really that's the new on time is ending a few minutes early. So yeah, definitely a great tip.
Fantastic tip. All right. So I know we're still waiting for a few things rolling in here in our chat, and it'll take a second for everyone to have a chance to type. We've got a couple coming in. Definitely learned more about getting external microphone and camera.
Hmm.
I love that. And I think, for me, that was a big aha when I first, sort of jumped in headfirst to virtual and remote.
Hmm.
I knew nothing about tech. So something as simple as I think getting a good, webcam or a microphone or even crisp, that was a big game changer for me, just so
Yeah.
I could, feel a little bit more comfortable in my work from home environment.
Hmm. Yeah, and really the goal with all of these tips is, I mean, it's not something that should be super complicated. It's something we can all do. And the fact that you're all tuning in today, and putting in that effort, that's great. That's just really, the first step, and you get all the new, gadgets and things like that. And again, it's not ones that are, thousands of dollars. So we don't want it to break the bank, but you'll see a big difference. And I'm excited for all of you to see that.
All right, they're rolling on in now, Lorraine. Let's see. So, ooh, fast and furious. Let me back up so I can keep on top of these here. All right. So you shared a lot of hardware and software tips, which are great. Should we expect these to be costly? I think Aston just answered just
Mhm.
now. And I love what you said too about like, if you're propping up your laptop just on some shipping boxes, that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, more than
Again, what
okay. Yeah.
what your audience sees on the other end, they don't know what's going on over here.
Yeah.
Sweatpants on bottom, sure. Learned a lot about clothing, the effects of stripes on camera.
Hmm.
Get another vote for ending meetings 5 minutes earlier.
Yes.
Working on not looking at myself in meetings, but doing that ahead of time and focusing on the meeting itself. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. It's hard,
Awesome.
but you'll get used to it.
It is. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles when you're transitioning into a virtual meeting space is getting used to what eye contact and body language feels like when you're not around a
Mhm.
conference table or in a physical
Mhm.
meeting room.
Mhm. I would also add too, when you turn off self view and you stop looking at yourself on video, I think a lot of what contributes to video fatigue is constantly looking at yourself and judging yourself. And it's like imagine if you had just someone holding a mirror next to you all day while you're just walking around doing like you're just going to keep looking. It's tiring. So turning off self view, at the very least will help with Zoom fatigue. And, in its best way, like you'll also be able to focus on the eye contact.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. And if you've not tried that before, for anyone on this call, that is something that you can just control in your video conferencing platform. Nearly all of them have that setting where you can turn off your own self view and just focus on your attendees.
Hmm.
All right. So, Lorraine, we had some questions that were coming in
Hmm.
while you were speaking, as well as a couple that were pre-submitted. So right now, I'd love to invite the group to, if you've not already, get that question into our Q&A, put any comments in our chat. But I want to open it up for some of the questions that were submitted if we're good to move on there.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, awesome. So one of the first questions that came in, and we actually had three around this, is Lorraine, how do you create a name tag?
Well, you can do it in a number of ways. I think the easiest way would be using the name tag feature in Prezi Video. So if you open up your Prezi Video app, and Kim can also, I'm sure, help you with this later if you have any trouble, but open up your Prezi Video app. There will be three dots in the top right. You drop down, Kim, I believe you click widgets,
Yep.
turn on name tag, and all you do is you just type in your name, type in your title or whatever you want to go underneath there. You can add a background image to it, choose a template you want to use for it, and then it's set up. So super simple.
Awesome. Yes. And I will definitely send out one of our knowledge base articles and our recap along with our call recording from today so that you all will have instructions. But that's exactly what I have in now. It's just simple as typing in my name and opening up Prezi Video. One thing that I love to share around this is that kind of tying back in with your tip around opening up meetings,
Mhm.
not asking, how are you?
Yeah.
You don't have to have this be like your name and your title. You have two lines of text that you can control. So
Yeah.
instead of saying Prezi training specialist, maybe I just want to have my icebreaker question,
Yeah.
join me for the meeting. So it's kind of a fun way to bring some of that content on screen. I think I get a little bit more out of Prezi Video. So we'll make sure you have the instructions in our recap email that's sent out.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Actually, we work with an agency, and they have their name, and then at the bottom they say like the agency name cheerleader. So it's just adding some personality, adding some fun to the call.
Yeah, I love it. We did get a shout out in our chat. Love the PV widgets. So if you've not checked those out, definitely encourage everyone to. All right, so next question that we had come in was about eye contact. So you
Hmm.
talked about the importance of making eye contact with your audience and not so much with yourself or looking
Hmm.
elsewhere. What if you use a second monitor?
I would really encourage you to put the camera on the main monitor that you're going to be looking at things. Again, like we don't, if you look away, and you have to look away, that's okay. I would just call out that you are looking at a second monitor, even if people kind of know, they're never really 100% sure. It just looks like you're kind of looking off at something else. But you saw me, like if I started talking like this the whole time, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel as engaging. So try to shift the camera to that main monitor. And again, that's the great thing about an external camera. You can place it, wherever is best. So I would just encourage you to try to do that.
Cool. Great. All right, let me scroll on through here. So those are all the live questions that we've had submitted so far.
Okay.
So I am going to take a look at some of the pre-submitted questions that people turned in when they registered. And one of those was, what's your number one tip for someone just getting started? And I think I love that question myself because I remember the fear that I had when I like overnight went from in person
Uh-huh.
to virtual and had no idea what I was doing and was just so nervous.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you're going to share one tip with someone who's kind of just getting their feet wet with it,
Hmm.
what would be the most important thing that you would suggest they try out?
Yeah, I would so I'll take it from, one of the so I think all the tips I mentioned today, those are, maybe go through each one like a checklist format. I think those are all like the basic essentials. But I would say probably the easiest one with the most impact will probably be updating your lighting. I think, you buy a ring light, buy two ring lights, or situate yourself in front of a window, which is the best option, and you're just going to look clear, better. Just everything's going to look better on video, and other people are going to notice.
Awesome. I love that. And I also think too that it's important, I'll just add my own
Mhm.
opinion in here as a virtual presenter. If you're just getting started too, I think it's probably important to remind yourself that it doesn't have to be perfect the
Yeah.
first time you do it. It's important to just kind of get started and try it out and learn from there. I know sometimes that when I speak with new people to virtual presenting, they feel like they have one little hiccup and it can throw everything off.
Hmm.
Hiccups are okay and they happen to the most seasoned of presenters, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so just getting started, maybe picking one or two things that you want to focus on to get
Hmm.
started before tackling, 100 things that you could think of improving can be very helpful in just getting started too.
Yeah, that's such a good point. The first time I started doing virtual speaking, think many things were off, but just slowly but surely you practice more, you get more comfortable, you start experimenting a little bit more, and you'll get there.
Awesome. Well, Lorraine, that is looks like you've covered the questions that were
Okay.
pre-submitted just through
Hmm.
our conversation already. And that I believe is all the questions that have been submitted live during our session. So I would just like to throw it back to you and see any final words of wisdom you would like to leave the group with.
I would just say that, if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed out about all of this, just again, like as Kim and I just said, take it step by step. We're all learning, improving. It's so great that you all took the time to try to learn this and develop your video presence, and you're going to see positive outcomes. I mean, just, one or two of these things already, you're going to see improvement. And feel free to check in on LinkedIn if you'd like. And yeah, I'm excited to hear about the improvements you see, and just reach out if any other questions come up. Thank you.
So, well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today for our monthly webinar series. We love having you. I think the tips that you shared today were very actionable and practical. So I'm excited to see what the attendees here do with them. And a couple pieces just to wrap up for the group on the audience. I will be sending out the recording. Look for that from me, usually within 24 hours or so. And I'll also be including any additional resources that we promised, as well as Lorraine's LinkedIn link as well.
Thank you, everyone. So great to chat with all of you today. Thanks, Kim, for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks again. All right. Oh, thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.